the newsroom. The French euphemistically call the birth of a newborn a happy event. Indeed, but worthy of the France 24 debate? Yes, even here in Republican France, the arrival of a royal baby is on our radar. News that the Duchess of Cambridge had checked into a private London clinic comes less than 24 hours after the aging King of the Belgians abdicated in favor of his son. The power of Europe's blue bloods may be almost exclusively symbolic, but symbols matter in politics. Why else would elected officials be happily volunteering their punditry services?
Well, obviously, best wishes to them, a very exciting occasion, and the whole country is excited with them, so everyone's hoping for the best.
Well, maybe not the whole country, but certainly more than 3/4 at last count. In a world in flux, amid the argument over what constitutes legitimate rule in places like the Arab world, Africa, Turkey, and Brazil, why does Europe still have so many monarchies? Today in the France 24 debate, we are looking at royal baby fever. With us, Florence FAUCHER. She's with the Center for European Studies at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po. Thank you for being with us. Joining us from London, Judith ROWBOTHAM. She teaches history at Nottingham Trent University. Thank you for being with us. Also joining us from the UK capital, Andrew Child, spokesperson for anti-monarchy advocacy group Republic. Thank you for being with us here. And Christophe, ROBEET, France 24 Europe editor. The France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, where our hashtag is F24debate. Before we go to our panel, let's go straight to Paddington, outside St. Mary's Clinic, and France 24's Catherine Nicholson. Catherine, it may be the internet era, but where you're standing at this moment, it's a good old-fashioned media scrum.
It absolutely is, François. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many photographers are down here, how many TV crews, from all different countries around the world. There have been a lot of them have been here for several weeks already. The first came even at the end of June. So some of them have been in for very much a long haul, and the first to be interested seems to have been the Americans who came over, and they've been staying. So yes, the street is absolutely packed full of people outside the Lindo wing, which is the private clinic of the St. Mary's Hospital here at Paddington.
Now, the fact that the Americans are paying as close attention as the British, that's an important point we'll bring up in our conversation. And as you were saying, Catherine, boy or girl, whatever happens, this is going to be the third in line to the throne.
That's right, yes, because the laws of succession in the UK have been changed. Now, it's not easy for people who grew up outside the UK to get their heads around this necessarily, but up until now it was always the case that boys took precedence over girls. So, for example, Princess Anne is the Queen's second child, but she comes way down in the order of succession because at the time she was born, boys took precedence. Now, the Queen has changed the laws of succession just this year. So whether it is a boy or a girl that's born inside the Lindo wing, it will one day be the King or Queen of Great Britain.
Catherine Nicholson, thanks. And of course, do come in and break into our conversation, Catherine, if there ever is news behind that door and that we're seeing on our screens from St. Mary's Clinic there in London. Catherine Nicholson there, who is doorstepping this story very much so. Florence FAUCHER, obviously, was it the Queen? It wasn't just so our viewers can understand. It's not the Queen herself who decides these things. It's the Prime Minister, right, and the government who decides when there's a change in the rules when it comes to the monarchy.
Well, I think it's a decision that is probably discussed with the monarch and clearly is voted by Parliament. So it is decided by the Prime Minister, who puts the bill on its agenda.
All right, and the royal baby fever definitely rising on this warm July day in London.
Royal baby.
We always watch this on TV, the kids love it, and now we are here.
I'm excited, I'm like a washing machine, I'm spinning, I'm on full spin. I've never been so dry in my life. I feel like I'm on holiday as well, and I'm really excited, I'm just so pleased to hear the news.
Symbolic of how we live, and the royal family has had a bit of a resurgence, so there's a romanticism associated to it. So it's more symbolic than important.
Andrew Child, do you feel a little bit outnumbered when you hear all those voices saying how wonderful it is that a baby's on the way?
Not really. I suspect that most people in the country couldn't care less, to be honest. I mean, we find this time and time again with big royal events. You look at the polling, most people are fairly disinterested. It may come as a surprise to you to learn that 2,000 babies are born every day in the UK. Globally, it's 370,000.
Judith ROWBOTHAM, do you agree?
I didn't hear that, I'm afraid, so I don't quite know what was said.
Andrew
just
Child
now.
was saying how most people don't care either way in the UK.
I don't think that's the case. I think the evidence is very plain that while there are people who are hostile, there are people who are indifferent, there are quite a lot of people who really do care. And as far as I'm concerned, why shouldn't they? If it's important to them as a symbol, and indeed more than a symbol, then I think it's perfectly fair that they are excited, enthusiastic. Why not?
Why not indeed? Andrew Child, is it something that is a bitter bone of contention when there are these sort of outpourings?
No, I mean, to be honest, we've found in Republic that these royal events are great recruiting grounds for us. People find the royal media frenzy quite abhorrent, quite disgusting. You know, the BBC's got a headline today saying the world waits. I can tell you people in Egypt, people in Syria aren't waiting on this news. I mean, that's absurd. It's pushed all the real news to the bottom of the agenda. You know, I mean, I'm very pleased for the parents of this child, but it's a private matter. As I say, there are 2,000 other babies born every day in the UK, and it's the media reaction that we have an issue with, really, and it raises some very profound questions about our political rights in this country, or indeed the lack of them. So we at Republic have launched a campaign called Born Equal, where, you know, we're not only questioning the disbarment of the citizens of this country in becoming head of state, but also we're focusing on the rights of this child who cannot choose its own career, cannot choose its own faith, or indeed if it wants to be an atheist in due course. So I think it really does raise some profound issues. Obviously, these events also kind of create a wonderful distraction for our politicians who are under the spotlight, you know, and I'm sure that they appreciate a few days when they're not having to justify how they're running the country or failing to do so.
Christophe, ROBEET, you heard Andrew Child with a strong opinion about the media coverage, the attention that's been given to this event. Over the weekend, it wasn't the birth of a royal baby in Belgium, but it was something quite unprecedented, an abdication.
Yes, absolutely.
How was the local media coverage different or the same over there?
Well, I was in Brussels yesterday covering the event. It was very interesting because I remember, I was still a child, but being a Belgian, I remember witnessing the coronation of Albert II. That happened after the death of his brother, Baudouin. It was a very sad moment for Belgium, and it was indeed a very sad day. Yesterday was a complete different story because it was really about passing on the baton. There were a lot of people on the street, a firework at the end. Now, of course, in Belgium, we're certainly not as passionate about our royal families, but the coverage was very interesting. In the south, it was all about how is he going to perform. This is the new king has a reputation for being quite shy and not at ease in public. So there was a lot of interest in how he would perform during the oath and during his speech. He did pretty well, by the way. So that was what the media remembered in the south. In the north, where the people are much more critical of the royal family for political reasons, because there you find more people who want a republic, an independent Flanders. They were more talking about what his next test will be, i.e. next year, general elections in Belgium. And we know even this royal family has a largely symbolic role in Belgium. But during these very difficult political crises, you remember, François, last time it took more than 500 days to form a government. Well, next year again we'll have elections, and that's where the new king will have to perform, will have to show that he can indeed mediate between the different political parties and across the linguistic divide in Belgium.
Right, so there's this important idea in Belgium that the king is an important role right now because of the fact that the country is so divided. In Britain, where I know there's going to be a referendum on whether or not Scotland secedes from the crown, is it the same thing?
Well, of course, the monarch's role is largely to symbolize the unity of the country, and to say that it's a mere symbolic role is actually a little playing it down, but it's very, very important. That's why actually there's such enthusiasm at the moment, and at a time when there's economic crisis, when we have a beautiful princess and a monarch that can symbolize the unity, when there are divisions, a contested government, a coalition, and so on, this is actually very, very important.
Judith, ROWBOTHAM, paying attention to the wedding of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, and now this birth, is it kind of an escape in hard times for people?
To some extent it may be, but I do think that, as has just been pointed out, there is an important role which does go beyond the symbolic for the royal family still, for those who care about the political constitution. And I think it's a little unkind to say it's pure escapism. And going back to the earlier point about it all being media hype, well, it's important to recognize, to remember that the media is, in this country, a commercial business. And people buy newspapers, watch television channels, listen to radio, which give them the stories they want to hear. It's quite interesting that the Guardian newspaper has today got two websites, one for Guardian readers who are interested in the royal birth, who are royalists, and another one for those that aren't, because they recognise that if they simply go one way, they're going to upset a significant number of their readers, because Guardian readers are the more likely to be polarised either for or against quite strongly. So,
but by the way, it's not just in Britain again that we're paying attention. You heard our reporter at the outset, Catherine Nicholson, saying how the Americans were among the first to set up shop. This is the front page of a popular French tabloid, Aujourd'hui en France, headlining both the birth and the change of monarch in Belgium, with an inside page cartoon where the man says, "More crowned heads? Why are you paying attention?" The woman answers, "They're rich, they don't work, they don't pay taxes." Doesn't that capture your imagination? Here in France, we don't have a king, but the Fifth Republic's often described as a presidential monarchy. French president's powers, which Florence aren't symbolic at all. They're very strong. Do you get the sense sometimes in your cross-channel dealings that there are French people who sort of yearn for a system where perhaps the head of state had a little bit less hands-on power?
Indeed, I do. And as I was coming here, I was talking to various people, and someone actually told me, maybe we should have a queen or a king, because there's so much corruption and so much dislike of politicians that maybe we would have actually something to be proud of. And I thought that was a very interesting comment in a very staunchly Republican country. I think at a time when British politics has been marred with a variety of scandals that has touched the left and the right and the centre, where politicians are really hated, where there are scandals about lobbyists and so on. The Queen, as a contrast to what happened 10 years ago, the Queen and the monarchy, to an extent, is now seen as a symbol of, certain calm and dignity, and, echoes the grandeur of the past of the UK, and is really a symbol of stability and unity, which I think is very important.
And I think it's The same goes for a lot of countries in Europe. It's also a symbol of continuity, and in times of crisis, with a political elite largely discredited across Europe, you're right. I think the same goes for the Netherlands. Look at Denmark, maybe a bit less Sweden, but certainly also Luxembourg. You have these royal families who have been established for centuries, most of them, and they do represent this continuity. Also, when you have a king or a queen, it's the king of all the people. When you have a president, it's supposed to be the president of all the people, but we all know that usually he's been elected with a margin of 51, 52%. So you have a very very strong divide there.
Andrew Child, do you, when you look at France's republic, do you still say to yourself, well, maybe having a queen isn't so bad after all?
No, not really. I think France is a very successful state. France isn't the model of a republic that we necessarily advocate. I think they have a very successful ceremonial model over in Ireland. Their last two presidents, Mary McAleese and Mary Robinson, incredibly popular. I mean, popularity ratings into the 90s. Well into their presidencies, and no monarch can really compete with that. I mean, if I could just pick up on a couple of points that have been made, I think that some of your guests need a history lesson. Continuity, well, the royal bloodline has run out on at least a couple of occasions here in Britain. The first occasion we had to go to the Netherlands to get William of Orange. The next occasion we had to go to Germany to fetch back Queen Victoria. So the idea that it's continuity is a complete nonsense. As far as unity goes,
2 centuries in Belgium.
These are people. Excuse me. Can I finish the point I'm making? These are people who don't partake in public life. We have the first in line to the throne who pontificates about what he thinks the National Health Service should or shouldn't be doing, yet never uses it. They've never used the state school system. I mean, it really is a complete nonsense. So, no, I don't think we're better off with the royal family and the Queen. I think it's absurd.
All right.
Can I just point out, in terms of the history lesson, William of Orange came across because he was married to Mary II, and he demanded to be made not king consort, but equal monarch. And since neither he nor Mary had children, the throne then passed to her younger sister Anne, who was equally unsuccessful. And it's not so much Victoria. The German line comes in when we look for a Protestant heir after the death of Anne, and so look to the nearest Protestant heir, who's a descendant of James I. And that's when we get what was then popularly known as German George I.
All right, so the issue of the bloodline is still topical here in 2013. When we come back, we're going to look at some of the other reactions with our Media Buzz segment. Much more to come here in the France 24 debate.